Today on Caviar Conversations, we have a very special guest. Today we have Leanne Chan. She's a serial entrepreneur and she's often worn many hats following her passions and hobbies and cultivating purposeful meaning out of them. Welcome, Leanne.
Welcome, welcome.
I'm so
Thank you
glad
for
to have
having
you.
me.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you here. It just felt like a natural progression, and you were someone I often thought about as I feel like every time I see you, you're jumping onto the next project, or there's always something exciting and thrilling to hear from your end.
Yes, I definitely like to follow my passions, and maybe because I'm a Taurus, I don't like wait around and wait for the perfect moment. I just charge ahead.
Yeah, totally. And earlier in chatting, we kind of we're naturally kind of gravitating towards themes around like grief and either a sense of loss like of yourself, and then also like the reinvention and the kind of pivot or transformation that takes place within grief. So let's kind of chat with like grief and kind of like what your experience with that is, and how that was, or you discover that it was kind of on the way and not in the way.
I entered grief probably throughout my life when I look back on it, but I think what really brought it out into the forefront is like when the world was grieving and we had COVID. And unfortunately for me, my grandmother, and then my dad, and then my husband, my soulmate, they all passed away within 2 years. And so in some ways, I was fortunate because the world as I knew it inside was completely obliterated. But on the outside, the whole world was completely different as well. And I look back now and I think it was a blessing that I then was able to have the time and place, because a lot of people don't, because life keeps going on when there's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
Just look at California last week, like,
Yeah.
you know, I was then able to lean into my grief. I could go into the forest, excuse me, go into the forest every day.
Yeah.
I started listening to podcasts and just really connecting with nature and myself, and having a beautiful, slow goodbye to life as I knew it, and then
Yeah.
thinking about like, okay, now I'm at 5 years post
Yeah.
and have suffered other losses of friends and things since. And the only way to get through really, really hard times is going inside and taking in like what is now, right? That they call it radical acceptance. So like looking around, not thinking about yesterday and what was, but what is my reality today, and how do I want to be? How do I want to show up for my friends, my family, myself, and like what do I want to do? Like what's next? What's going to excite me now? What's is there to discover? What do I want to see? And I think regardless if you suffer a loss in business or like a loved one or a health scare, it's like we have to kind of stop, pause, assess the present, and then figure out how the hell we're going to get through it and the next chapter.
Well, you sound so graceful in talking about something which must have been a very difficult time, and definitely a time of like a huge shift and transition in your life as well, and an unexpected one, especially if you pictured a certain way of life or with your partner, and your soulmate. And maybe not all of us have had grief in the form of the loss of a loved one or family member, though definitely we've all at some point will face a type of loss. And again, whether it was like career, like a lot of people have experienced that through pandemic, and also even through all these natural disasters that are occurring, people are losing their homes, and of course loved ones, pets, things like that as well. And it's great that you utilized that and kind of went to turn inward, and I think that's what helps process and kind of come out of it with a sense of just grace and with the attitude. And it can be really difficult. Did you have like a mentor that taught you that, or how did you kind of learn about these practices? Because they're not hard to have it naturally,
They
but
are so
yeah,
hard to
yeah,
learn naturally. And even allowing ourselves to have grief, like mine is quite obvious, but somebody else might think, like, oh, I lost my job. And everyone's just like, oh, yeah, just have a couple drinks and put your resumes out there and get on with it.
yeah,
But I mean, everyone experiences life and loss in their own way. And I think honoring ourselves with our own grief and being like, okay, if somebody asks me, like, oh, are you okay? You don't have to just say, oh, yeah, I'm great. I'm okay.
yeah,
And like ask for help. And like, there's so many resources out there. I was in COVID times, so I just looked online and I found the hospice. I was living on the island. They had all these online programs. Like, you will love this. Like, they even had online grief aromatherapy. And
oh
we,
yeah,
so they like mailed you these, scents, and they had online Reiki. And so and those are all volunteers. And
yeah,
that's one thing I notice is people do want to help each other. And it may not, unless if you're open to it, you're
yeah,
not going to find it. And it can be a beautiful thing that restores your faith in yourself and in the community when you allow yourself to be vulnerable. It's not weak. You're not weak. If you're
yeah,
sad or angry that you've lost something or that something happened in your life or didn't happen in your life, it's not weakness. It's just vulnerability and a chance, I think, to get better, stronger, smarter, more beautiful.
yeah. And I think the concept of like vulnerability is actually, it's very courageous to speak your truth, and regardless of what other people say or think, that you accept yourself so strongly that you aren't going to hide behind it, and you're just going to say it. And if it's too much for somebody else, that's okay. That's kind of like their stuff now coming up. And in also discovering that, I think there's this concept too of like, the people that are volunteering probably have had some sort of a loss themselves, and it is like a therapy for them and a healing method for them to give back to others that are grieving, and it kind of helps them process. So you're doing yourself a favor by participating in things like that, but you're also like giving to someone else that it might help them process their grief, and for them to help and be around other people that are like processing their grief differently can be a very healing and therapeutic
100%.
thing for people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did a online sort of group, grief group, and everyone had lost a different person and was living with it in a different way. And it was interesting. It wasn't exactly the same as mine, but then it was enabled me to look at what grief looked like for them. And then in summation, you realize, okay, we're all so independent, and we're going to get through our stuff at a different pace, in a different way. It's
Yeah.
not going to look the same, but we're all being courageous to try and get through it.
Yeah. And as a serial entrepreneur, like, I know you have your beautiful cookbook that's out, that is geared towards people with a stoma. And in your time of grief and developing that, was that a huge propeller in creating this and helping other people? Or what was your kind of like, what was giving you that fire to create this and get that out there and cultivate something that can help a lot of people going through the same thing as you?
Well, obviously didn't set out to do it.
Yeah.
Like any entrepreneur, it's when you go out there and you need something or you want to do something in a certain way and it's not like existing, you're like,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to do it then. Like, we need this. And so that's exactly why I did that, like, lifestyle cookbook. And our friend who's been on your program, Joanne, she helped set up the whole photo shoot and for it to go along with it. And so again, like, having that community feeling of project to get something done was really wonderful. And it has been sort of my mantra for what I'm going to do in life. Is I'm so curious about learning new things and in wellness and health that can help myself, but then it ends up distilling out and helping other people as
Yeah.
well. And so that's why when I've gone through, I guess, times of challenge or loss, then I've like taken a yoga teaching course or taken a, sound therapy teaching course or, doing a deep dive into research about, allopathic and adjunctive healthcare for cancer, like around the world. And I was a cancer healthcare advocate for about 10 years. And all it is just sharing of knowledge. There just wasn't somebody there for us.
Yeah.
With my husband who had colorectal cancer, and we fought it for 8 years, and we were going to do immunotherapy in Germany once a month, and customizing his healthcare according to like his personality and what
Yeah.
he wanted to do and live his life, which is so important because the mind controls so much of our
Yes.
well-being, right?
Totally. And it does affect your immune system and all that. And it can have a huge impact on the cells in our body and how much like stress and cortisol that we release. So have you always like, did you grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, or where did this like knack of entrepreneurship come from? And where do you think, like, what do you think it was in your life that helped you like sprout that or like support that into where it is today?
Well, no, not at all. My dad was a dermatologist, and my mom was a beauty queen turned teacher turned mother of four. And no, I think I was just born that way. My mom said, I would ask, like, what does this button do? And like, I would have already pressed the button.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just a natural curiosity. Like, I like answers.
Yeah.
I like
And
finding
where
them.
did the yoga training come in? Was that after a loss as well for like your own healing? And often I do find when you've done your own healing or your own curiosity drove you to learn something new, when you've seen the impact of it in your life, like you do just want to share it with others.
True.
And you want to spread, and sure, not everybody may be ready to receive it, but those that do and kind of trickle along, you do end up supporting and impacting many people, and sometimes you don't even realize it. And,
True.
yeah.
The yoga came from like I've broken my body a few times because I'm super like sporty, and my personality of entrepreneurship, it also extends to sports. So I've like broken things. I've had like, I don't know, they call my knee surgery like a football player's surgery, because I don't think any young girl has ever had that bad of a knee injury. And so then I've always looked to alternative or complementary things to like speed up healing or make sure that I'm healing well. And yoga was one of those. Like in my 20s, I went to India and I did this thing called Panchakarma for a month, and everyone just thought I was crazy for paying money to be basically everything good in life was taken away. You're in like a very basic accommodation, and you're, no gluten, no dairy, no meat, up at 5:30 in the morning with like medicines every day, and you don't leave the property. And but it now is what healthcare is. Like, people go on retreats normally. Like, to say you do yoga is like, it doesn't need, nobody even blinks an eye now. Now everybody's into biohacking and injecting themselves with peptides and stem cells and, going and do plasma exchanges, getting hooked up and getting blood transfusions, right? So I'm still like on that health edge. I still really enjoy, I guess, controlling my own epigenetics, controlling my own wellness. So
Yeah, biohacking has totally blown up. And the first time I kind of was in that realm or heard of it was obviously in naturopathic school. Like, everything we learn every day is biohacking. And I would have a drive to school, and so I would always listen to the Dave Asprey like Bulletproof. Like, that was my first kind of
it usually
experience
is,
of
and then
like
you kind of
biohacking.
progress.
Yeah, exactly. And then I kind of dove a little bit more into the spiritual route, which just kind of resonated with me a bit more. After my time in naturopathic medical school, I felt like the courses that were very like physical, like, hey, take this supplement for this deficiency, sure, that was all great, and it was still very fascinating. But anytime we had a course that was more on like mindfulness or kind of meditation or even like psychology and counseling, I was always so fascinated. Like, I'd be like, I don't want any distractions. Like, just, I was propelled to just be like stuck on this lecture, no distractions. And there was something that was just very, I was just super drawn to it, and it makes sense now because I'm always kind of doing mentorship things and learning different methods, and I do really like following Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks a lot about like meditation and how your nervous system and how you can shift your nervous system through breath and things like that, and yeah, I've naturally kind of moved from, as much as the physical is very important, of course, what we eat is important, and how we nourish ourselves and our physical activity, though I've been super more obsessed with the mind
Totally.
and nervous system aspect of things. And I think that's something that's just always going to be, I'm always going to have a knack for, just like you're kind of always have a knack for biohacking, because, you know, science keeps going and at such a fast pace that there's always something new and cool and revolutionary to try.
Well, definitely. I mean, in my book, I addressed like mind, body, and health. So it was like food every day, but there's also a mindfulness exercise every day. And when I went to do Panchakarma in India, that was it, like the 5 things to totally cleanse your mind, body, and soul. And you know, Ayurvedic medicine, similar to what you've done, is 5,000 years old. So it's tried and true. And just as of late, because I've just started my master's in neuroscience, so I'm now reading clinical studies, and it's like crazy. Like they talk about like bipolar disorder, and you can take lithium, but it only works in like 30% of people, and then there's all these side effects which are really bad.
Yeah.
And then and other courses of treatment are mindfulness, and it has obviously no side effects,
Yes.
almost as much efficacy of helping people, and you're like, why is it just sort of like as an afterthought?
And it's free at one point in
It's
time. Once
free.
you learn it, it's
It's
free.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's actually super powerful.
I feel like it's really hard to kind of navigate or look at yourself or kind of want to dive into something that was a painful experience, like a loss or a grief, and we have our own like limiting beliefs of ourselves, and we can get stuck into like the victim of like, and not that it's anybody's fault or any blame, but the like, why is this happening to me, or like, why did God or the universe bring this to me? And you kind of get stuck a little bit in this spiral, and then you kind of compare, but this person had cancer and they were okay and they got through it, and how come in my case that didn't happen? And you gotta get on this like negative train thought. Did you
Totally.
notice like a lot of those kind of patterns happening, and then at what point did you feel like you had this like eureka shift during your time in India, or like that kind of clicked? Because you kind of get into this state where all your distractions are gone, and especially when you're in a fasted or partially fasted state of the day with the meditation, like your access to yourself is so strong. And at what shifted for you during that time, and kind of what lesson did you take out of that?
Like in full honesty, there were times where I wanted to stay more in that state that you talk about, like by myself in meditation, and I didn't know if I wanted to go back to the real world. Like I even bought a house on the water where I was gonna like grow my own vegetables and stuff. And if anyone who knows me, that would be a really tall order for me to be by myself all the time growing my own vegetables. But that state just felt so good, and like the real world and responsibilities didn't feel very good. But I have a child and a dog and friends and family who care about me, who kept reaching out. And so I had to blend it. And there wasn't a eureka moment, not in the grief stuff of losing my husband. And then shortly after, I actually lost a very good friend. It's been more like that the window analogy, where they say like you have a window of tolerance, and the more hard things that you encounter, your window gets bigger, like what you can handle. So maybe like the more bad things that happen, the easier smaller bad things are to
Yes.
get through. I don't know if that's not
Yeah,
very
you like
positive.
you
but-
like stress about them less. It's kind of like I feel like there's a little bit of an inherent trust that it's like, okay, I can get through this, and I trust myself I can, and I'll pick myself up, or or like a phoenix rising from the ashes, like that kind of analogy where I think we're all human, and I think every single one of us will have that thing in common that we'll all go through something, either like a health condition or a family member will have a health condition. At some point in time, we'll have a grief or a loss. And that's something really like bonding. Like, and they always say, like, okay, in this analogy of like, we don't choose our pain, but we choose our suffering. And how do you relate to that, or how would you kind of take that in your life, and how has that transitioned or pivoted? Because we all know someone that's kind of like really stuck in something, and at times we've been there too, and we don't know how to get out. And how, like, what advice would you give to someone that's a little bit stuck in something like that?
Well, you kind of just said it, right?
Yeah.
The state of being stuck is just in our heads. I actually went to a workshop last weekend. So that's one thing, continual learning. And
Yeah, I know we love
really,
our
really helps.
education. Yeah.
We're total junkies. But in the seminar, she's talked about how, there's the ego, and the ego is where the pain and the hurt and the like, I don't want to try anymore. And then I give up, like all those bad, negative self-talk thoughts are, and that's in our past and our future. But if we just go back, like what I said about radical acceptance, about like right now I'm here with beautiful you having a talk on this gorgeous day. And what are my decisions? Like just right here now, and what makes me feel good. And that was one of the things that brought me out, is my ego wanted me to stay sequestered away, but then when I thought about what actually like makes me feel good, it's being with other people.
Yeah.
Right? And sharing good times and sharing bad times, but continually striving to have those good times and make memories with my friends. And sometimes I'd be having like the greatest time, and that would actually propel me into like a crying fit at the end of the day, because I wasn't sharing that with my soulmate.
Yeah.
But overall it was like, well, I felt that great joy again. It's still there.
Yeah.
So like, and then you wake
And
up and
it's
it's another
okay
day.
to have that with your friends. Sometimes it's like we feel guilty to carry on with life, or be happy again, and I think that can also stay stuck too.
Yeah, that I should be, what's the perfect grieving friend or widow or
Yeah.
whatever, or yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to
I
just
know.
accept ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you as like a social connector and butterfly, and if we could say, Vancouver had socialites, I would kind of put you a little bit in that category of adventure and things. And how important has it been in your life? I mean, we kind of already have seen it, to cultivate these connections, and they say it gets harder as we get older to cultivate the same level of depth of friendships, because we get busy, people are raising families, they go their separate ways. And how do you stay connected with your friends at that level, or cultivate like new friendships when you're in different parts of the world even?
With friendships, because I'm a bit older than you, it's really interesting how they kind of flow around. So just a little bit of a change now, as I'm in 2 weeks going on a trip to Pebble Beach with some high school friends, and like 3 of them I literally have not seen or had any communication with them since the day we finished high school. Wow. And it's a time, I guess, in our lives where we're reaching out, we're appreciating things from our past, and the fact that I think people, when you know and grow up with, they know you for you.
Yeah.
So whether you've made good decisions or bad decisions, they kind of know why you made those decisions, and they accept that about you.
Yeah.
And then again, that theory of don't live in the past or the future, but now. So if you are a young parent and you're hanging out with only other young parent friends, or like you're a dog mom,
Yeah.
and you have friends that you go for walks with every day now, but not in the future, like that's totally okay. And I think you just keep reaching out to those people that make you feel good about yourself. They're good people in the world. They're showing up in the world how you want to show up in the world. And because, there's that theory, right? You
Yeah.
are whatever the 10 people that you keep
surround
closest to
yourself.
you.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And if there's friends that are offline, try to be compassionate, but you can only help people if they want to be helped.
For sure. Yeah. And I've had a friend kind of just go MIA for a bit, and I would message her nearly every day, and I would call her. And even though most of the time she didn't answer, I kind of just, I didn't ever take offense to it at the time, because
That's
I just
awesome.
assumed like, okay, whatever, there's something she's going through, and maybe she's just needs the confidence to do it on her own, and that's just a decision. Like, I just kind of, that was my assumption. Because I've done things where I've had to like shut people out, and it's not that I didn't want them in my lives at all. It's just like I needed to create the identity of like who I wanted to be and who I was and what were my likes and dislikes, and be very strong in that before I kind of came in my surroundings. So I kind of just was like very chill about it, and it got to a point where I would be like laughing, and I found so much humor in it. So I would message her and be like, "Hey, like how's it going? Like I know you need to eat. So like want to go for lunch? Like you got to be hungry." And like even then she like wouldn't answer, and after maybe it was like a 6 month period where she kind of started like reaching out to all the friends again. And at one point she was just like, you know what, I have to just say something, is like, you were the one that really helped me get through that. And she's like, even when you would just say like, I know you got to eat, she's like, I know I just like didn't feel like messaging anybody, but she's like, that meant the world to me that you kept following up.
Yes. Yes.
And I actually would be like laughing, and I was like, oh, I feel like parts of myself are coming back again. And it was crazy to hear. Like, it brings me to tears, because to me I was just like being the annoying like little sister that's just like bugging you, and I don't care if you don't want to talk, I'm still gonna like poke. And I didn't realize like how much of an impact that had on someone. And I was like, wow, like I didn't even realize what you were going through, because you were MIA, like nobody knew.
Right.
Like, were you just, I don't know, off with your partner and not talking to anybody, or was there something more going on? Like, nobody had any idea. And it was just really like eye opening, and I was just like, wow, I had no idea. Like, thank you for sharing. Like, I just kind of,
You're such a
yeah.
beautiful person.
Well, thank you. I mean, we try. I mean, I think we all kind of have a intuitive sense, like when we want to reach out to somebody.
Yes.
And I think just follow it at times, even if you don't
Yeah,
know or don't hear
and not
back.
and not expect a result, but just like if you feel, hey, I just want to call Noya, I just want to be like, what's going on? Just like do it,
Yeah.
because actually, I sort of was MIA directly after my husband died, and it did mean a lot to get those messages.
Yeah.
And sometimes, a lot of people have asked me, well, what do I do when like somebody's like really sad, or if they lost someone? I'm like, just be you, just like reach out, say hi. You don't have to ask them always how they are. Like, even if you prattle on about the party you went to last night and the gong show that happened,
Yeah.
and it just makes people feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah, I
a
think
big
that's one of the
gift
greatest gifts. Yeah, that
in
someone,
friendship, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. And I remember one time, like, I don't know, I just had an urge. I think I'm still in this phase, but I had a really long phase of where I would just call people. Like, I knew if I texted, it wasn't ever going to be a flow of a convo. Like, it would be like, okay, you answer, and then 2 hours later, you're like in the shower doing something else. So it's just kind of very choppy. So I would just call people, and then I don't know, a couple times, like after maybe a month or two or something would pass by, I would call a friend, and they would just text me, yeah, is it all good? Or like, is something wrong? I'm like, no, like I'm just calling to chat. Like, I just kind of was like, hey, I haven't touched base with you. I thought about you, and like, I just thought I would give you a call. But it's funny because sometimes people don't realize it, or they think like something must be wrong, or
If
like,
you're
is everything
calling.
okay? Yeah. We've got into this world of just like sending memes on Instagram,
I
or
know.
quick texts and stuff. But yeah, I think cultivating those friendships is really important, and connection is one of our like hierarchy of needs as well.
It's huge. Yeah, like having gone through bouts of loneliness. You'd never know to look at me because I'm out and about, but loneliness is usually when you feel like, wow, I'm going through something, and I don't think anyone can understand, the thoughts that are going through my head or how I'm feeling. And it's so important to share it, because otherwise you never know that you're not alone. If you
Totally.
keep it all to
Yes.
yourself, like And then as soon as you say it, and it can be like a laughing joke actually in the
Yeah.
end, because I'm like, I was exactly thinking the same thing, and then you
Yeah.
know
There's
it's
almost like a
light and
little
fun.
relief, like a relief that happens
Yeah,
when you share something, and then you're like, okay, I was so embarrassed about this. And actually, okay, no, it's all good. Like, I was so scared to admit that this is how I felt about something. And then you share it, and somebody sees and hears you and holds that space. And you're like, oh, like it dissolved half the problem or like the stress around the thing that it
exactly.
was. Yeah. So let's talk about like neuroscience and what got you into this. Like now you're in a whole, soon I'm going to see you with the glasses and having this like biohacking lab and teaching
It's just
others.
another crazy Leanne antic, and now I can analyze my own craziness.
Yeah.
Um, so neuroscience, of course, and it's also psychology and mental health. It's sort of just a topic that I have been interested in. My deep dive into medicine started with the cancer research, but then and then blending into what you said about like our mind and our thoughts and mindfulness. Well, like neuroscience is what proves that mindfulness is actually effective. Like it's showing where it's lighting up in the brain. It's showing, um, the decrease in inflammation in certain parts of the brain, and all of that. And so it's taking an interest like podcasts, which I love podcasts, and then going behind the veil. I'm like, I just needed to know a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I looked online and found that program, and where that will take me next, I don't know.
Yeah. And so are you like a big dreamer where you're like, this is where I'm going and this is what I've decided? Or has it kind of just been a thing that naturally like, oh, okay, this is where I'm going now and oh, now it's going to go this way, and kind of how have you navigated your life and through all your entrepreneurial experiences and
I love entrepreneurism. Like I love talking to anybody about like their new ideas and their new businesses, and um, like talking about how to market it and get it out into the world. And the neuroscience is getting me in that direction, just
yeah.
in an area that lights me up and I find fascinating. And it's a little intense, I have to say.
Yes, I mean the science behind it is always very technical and yeah, scientific.
Yes, I would say I finessed my way into the program. Hopefully, no one from the university knows this and kicks me out. And now I'm in it. And, thank God for ChatGPT. I use Copilot more, but it is so hard. Like, I will
Yeah.
read a paper,
Yeah.
and I'm talking constantly
Yeah.
to the AI to just understand one sentence.
Yeah.
But then what I love about it is it's challenging,
Yeah.
and for anti-aging and everything like that, we're supposed to continuously challenge our mind and learn new
Yeah.
things. I'm like, okay, I am
Yeah.
like 100 million
You're like, I'm
times
gonna
in
look
one
10 years
flipping
younger after
paper.
this one
I should
article.
I should look 20 by the time I finish this paper.
Yeah, sharp mind.
Right?
Totally.
But yeah, it's just a part of the journey day to day.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten involved in like an entrepreneurial venture that like totally didn't pan out, and were you able to like bring it back to life, or at what point were you able to be like, okay, this is not working, and move on and let go of that idea and transition, or did it evolve into a new idea? Like how did you kind of take those challenges in entrepreneurship?
I would say that there were like a couple
Yeah.
of fails. One of them was in partnership, like choosing your partners. And they always say, like every book about business and
Yeah.
choosing partners tells you, like you have to align your core values.
Yeah.
Didn't do that part.
Yeah.
So that was the cause of that one. However, I finessed a way out of it where everybody that was involved left the table okay. No one was like devastated or had a loss or anything like that. A lot of ego was involved.
Yeah.
And so it was a good negotiation skills practice, and I learned a lot through that. And I'd say another sort of epic fail was in the philanthropy work I do. There was a foundation that I worked on in Africa, and I liked all of the projects that we supported, but the thing with grassroots is very susceptible to social or political or war changes, and so a couple of our projects just got decimated out because of war. And what I learned from that was not to not do those kinds of projects,
Yeah.
but rather just keep trying and hope that the outcome will be different next time.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
I can't predict a war, but you can just keep trying if you believe in the cause. I guess
Yeah.
that's it. If you have a total firm conviction of
Yeah.
what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it makes you feel, and you get trampled on or it
Yeah.
gets wiped out, you just try again.
I guess if you just don't get so defeated by like the loss or the failure that you were like unwilling to keep going or persevere and you just kind of gave up. And I think like what you said, you just keep going. And if that one moment it works and for that small number of people that it helps, it can be very rewarding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable, like again, being like, okay, I could have assessed this differently. I'm going to try and assess it differently
Yeah.
next time versus staying in a state where of blaming, like the triangle: victim,
Yeah.
hero,
Perpetrator.
perpetrator. Don't
Yeah.
stay in the triangle. Like say, okay, I had this role.
Yeah.
It didn't and I actually say to myself, okay, that didn't work. That was an epic failure.
Yeah.
And then try again.
Yeah. How old's your daughter? And have you kind of influenced her in some like entrepreneurial things or independence or how have you?
KJ is 16.
Yeah.
And just he knows his own mind and just goes for it.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
Well,
born like that.
yeah. Well, I'm sure you've had like a lot of influence and you foster a lot of like making choices on yourself. Yeah.
You know what's actually really cute is he had to do a
Oh, sorry,
photo
your son.
project. So it's okay. He had to do a photo project, and one of the photos he was standing on a rock, like in in mountain pose, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's me. Like
Yeah.
I got into a little bit of me got into him. It was so cute.
Yeah. I think also like if I think of being a child, like you just get so much like by diffusion and it creates like so much of what your child is going to become. And I'm sure you've had that like with your parents when you see, and even the little like annoyance things where we're like, I'm nothing like my mom or I'm nothing like my dad, and then there's like a thing that comes in, you're like, oh my god, I'm exactly like them, what the heck. And you kind of have these like funny like humorous moments related to that and
Yeah, you're
stuff.
like, yep,
So,
got that from my dad. Working on that. Gonna try and
right.
not do that, or like, for me with
Yeah.
my dad was sports. He taught me every sport under the sun so that it would never be a limiting factor if I got invited to do golf or skiing or whatever it is.
Yeah. And how do you like, so let's dive into the kind of transition into like the new you. Like once you've done the yoga kind of instructing, did you start teaching in that? Did you kind of run with it? Because a lot of things often start with our own personal, like we just want to do it for ourselves to learn.
So true.
And at what point did you switch and you're like, no, I want to share this with the world or share like what I've learned? Because yoga plus all these other kind of trainings or courses that you've done related to like grief and healing all are connected together, and you end up with this wealth of knowledge that is so beneficial to share. So what kind of propelled you to share, and how did you transition into that sharing and teaching and getting other people to learn what you learned to help them out?
In the time when I had my PR and event company, we always had interns, which was great. So that was just a natural on the daily. And then when I got the yoga teaching certification, then I blended it with my biohacking of infrared. So I opened up a private infrared yoga studio. And so I could have up to 8 clients. And so we could work together. And that was really great.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the future, I'll blend maybe everything together. The philanthropy, of course, marketing and PR, you can take everywhere into every business.
Yeah.
But the yoga, the neuroscience, my passion for biohacking, real estate, my love for travel. So in a perfect world, I would have my own little retreat or city where it would just be this beautiful place where you came to, heal and learn and reset yourself and renew yourself, fight a disease, But that would be my dreaming utopia.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. And you know what? I've gone to like Whistler and Scandinave Spa, and I feel like retreats like that are kind of embody some of that as well, with like the silent rooms and the sunbathing, and you
Yes.
get like a little bit of that experience as well. And yeah, pairing it with the yoga is, yeah, sounds wonderful.
We need it. Like life is pretty intense and
Yeah.
fast. So I think taking some time out and resetting, if you can do it on your own or going somewhere,
Yeah.
it's essential.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've always kind of known like where you're going or trusted in the direction or opportunity that's kind of come in your path. Though, what advice would you give for someone that's like, hey, I kind of want to start some business, but I'm like not sure where to start. I just know what I'm doing currently. I'm not that passionate about like what kind of practical advice would you give them to help give them a little bit of direction or figure out their direction?
Such a good question. And it's sort of what a lot of people ask at the workshop. They're all asking about that. And it's that balancing of like practicality. Like we have to live life and be responsible and pay our bills and stuff like that. But also being able to indulge a passion of what makes you feel good. So
Yeah.
I always did the passion, what makes me feel good on the side.
Yeah.
And then looked at the opportunities once you're in it to see if you can make
The full
the
jump.
full jump
Yeah.
and and still be responsible.
Exactly. Yeah, especially like, nowadays we can't just take, months on end off work to explore a passion that typically nowadays costs a lot of money to
Yes, it
start. So,
does.
yeah, we have to be more practical and responsible and feasible to go through those. Yeah. And so what's next for
What's next?
Leanne? Yeah.
Well, actually, like immediately next is I have to submit my plan for my next essay
Okay, nice.
on my course. But yeah, just like getting through the course, enjoying life. I picked up tennis last year. I'm, skiing. My son, he's very intense with his studies and his soccer and
Yeah.
everything like that. And enjoying life, like I have some friends that are going through some hard times and illnesses, and like having that time to be present for them
Yeah.
and just keep going, I guess.
Yeah. I'm sure you naturally your friends probably naturally gravitate towards you because you probably have this like very healing energy, having gone through so much that you're very open and able to sit with people and kind of hold space for other people's pain as well, because so often we feel uncomfortable around people like suffering or going through pain that it can be hard to just like listen
True.
and hold that space where they can feel seen and heard, and you don't try to just, okay, well, let's just forget about it, or like, brush it aside and
Right.
thinking that might make somebody feel better. But whereas like feeling like fully seen and heard can be such a healing experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the friend that knows when to say, "Hey, let's order a bottle of wine."
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, let's go for a walk in the forest and like talk this out and get grounded and whatnot." And so,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it sounds like you've worked with like a lot of people that you know, or like kind of your like social entrepreneur spirit has turned into serial entrepreneur. Like you've worked with Joanne and some other partners that you knew. Do you typically like, do these come from like natural conversations that gravitate, or do you kind of have an idea and you're like, this person would be perfect? Let me
I
see if
don't
they're,
have an idea.
Yeah.
It just happens organically.
Yeah.
On one side, the positive is I'm always working with people that I know, and that's really exciting. And the other side is that I've never been able to sort of coldly get a position
Yeah.
in a company or a contract. It's always been, "Oh, I heard that you could help me with this. Do you have the time to help me with
Yeah.
this, that, or the other thing?" And it's been everything from wellness to
Yeah.
home design to marketing and
Yeah.
PR to I want to start a family foundation. So just sort of all of things that I've been
Yeah.
doing.
It sounds like you really embrace kind of where you're at that time, and don't get bogged down by like this title or box of like what your expertise is for that entrepreneurial pursuit. Like you could have just stayed in the, health and wellness book, and kept propelling that. But I think you're very authentic. Like this is what I'm kind of feeling from you, is a lot of authenticity of like where you're at now. And if that goes into like home design, that's fine. If
So
that
be
goes
it.
into philanthropy, okay, and you're kind of just gonna follow where you're at that time, and that's kind of like a very like heart forward way of being. I don't know if I'm sure there's a terminology for it, but that just kind of feels very like you're kind of listening and following where your heart is like guiding you, or where your soul is guiding you to go and like flourish that aspect. So I really appreciate that
Thanks.
about you.
Thanks for saying that. You know what I think it helps with too is not having fear,
Yeah.
because I've never been a thing. Like if I could say, oh, I am whatever, I'm a lawyer and I'm going to become a partner in this law firm, and the track is very obvious and direct,
Yeah.
then it becomes so much a part of an identity of who I am,
Yeah.
then I have fear of that loss.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have to walk into a room and I can't just be like, oh, I'm Leanne and I'm a partner of a law firm, and therefore
Yeah.
you can think that I'm all these good things.
Yeah.
I just come in and I'm like, hi,
You're like,
I'm
"Hey,
Leanne.
today I'm this, but tomorrow might be that, and
You
yesterday I
like
was
me, you
this."
don't like me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a very authentic way of being. And what influence from your family would you say has helped you the most in terms of developing this? Because a lot comes from our upbringing and that. So what was one of
Hard
some
work.
influences? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Asian culture, right?
Yeah.
So my parents for sure taught all of us how to work hard, how to be good people. Like I look at my brothers and sisters, I'm like, they're really good people. Like they're in this world doing no damage and only really trying to make it better. And tight family, which at sometimes was like suffocating, right?
Yeah.
But now as an adult, it's great. I've go for dinner, we go,
Yeah.
biking around the seawall, we go on trips with our kids every year.
Yeah.
So that's really nice.
Yeah, it brings such a support system and connection.
Yes.
And yeah, that's so nice.
Yes, and everyone's competitive. Everyone is sporty.
Healthy competition.
Everyone is sport- I
Yes.
don't know.
But it's kind of good if you had a little bit of that growing up where you can handle it. Like you have a little bit of a thick skin that you understand it's just healthy competition, where it
Yes.
doesn't like totally throw you in a disarray that like, oh my God, this person's competitive
True.
or I can't compete. So
Well, I have
yeah,
one brother
that's nice.
who's like immense genius, and then another brother who just wins everything. Like you could pick the most random game. It could be a board game or like that beanbag game or whatever,
Yeah.
football, and he will just always win. Like I don't think he's ever lost. And it's quite cute because with all the cousins, they always want to beat their uncle, right? And
Yeah.
they're never going to beat their uncle.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious.
And then I just have like an amazing human as a sister. So
So I
yeah.
won't make any bets or competitions with you or anybody in your family. I'll gracefully, decline and just enjoy
just
time.
play, but just
Yeah.
enjoy, be in it for like the fun of the game versus trying to
Right? Exactly. Yeah. It's like Monopoly. I feel like I never win if I play with my partner. He's a
Yes.
wicked mind master of Monopoly and getting all the right properties. And even though it's a roll of a dice, but somehow
He always wins.
he's always winning. So yeah, I think only the first 2 times we ever played Monopoly, I won because I was teaching him. And after that, I
Well, you're
haven't seen
conquering
much.
other
much
areas of
winning.
life than Monopoly.
But it's okay. It's fun anyways. We have a lot of healthy fun and competition with friends when they come over and when we play some Monopoly. So we like it. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. I've
Thanks for
absolutely loved the
having me.
conversation, and it's so great to like hear a little bit more about your experiences and all this biohacking and health and mindfulness space.
Yes, we'll have to do some together.
Right? Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noya.